And because it's a lot easier to get a green card going through a legal port of entry, we know every single person that's coming into the United States, and people aren't potentially hurting themselves going through a desert, and they're not potentially being taken advantage of by owners that are looking specifically for illegal immigrants to take advantage of. You're being invited to speak. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
What did you want to talk about?
Nothing really. I just wanted to know what you thought about deporting immigrants.
Deporting immigrants? I think it's terrible. I think it's a humanitarian disaster.
Illegal immigrants.
Yeah, I think it's a humanitarian disaster.
Just at face value?
Oh yeah, for sure. Big time. Big humanitarian disaster.
So you think if you crossed over into another state illegally and they deported you, it would be a humanitarian crisis?
Well, I have to ask myself what causes me to want to do that. The problem is that you had a sudden influx of asylees, and there really is not a simple pathway to citizenship, which results in an increased amount of illegal immigration. If there was a simple pathway to citizenship, or at least a simple pathway to, say, a green card or worker's visa, then you would not have any illegal immigrants. You would just have people that we know are in the country.
Well, I mean, people become asylees through illegal border crossing.
That's correct. It takes years.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't. I mean, not that long. I mean, you can still be recognized as an asylum seeker. When you cross over illegally, you're given a court date, and you go to that court date, and then you plead your case as to why you're allowed to stay. And then if they decide to let you stay, depending on where you're from, it doesn't matter if you're Manusian or whatever it is. They'll give you a token, and where they send those people, you'll go with those people. They try to keep the cultures together as well. So and they do rely on sanctuary cities to do that. And these sanctuary cities have determined, hey, we want our populace to be subjected to, the burden of illegal immigrants, whether that's through, losing job opportunity, housing, whatever that is. They subject the American population to that. Now, you would argue, and would I be correct in saying this, that to support humanity, right, for this moral point of view, it is okay to subject the citizenry to these immigrants, correct?
Yeah, well, I'm perfectly okay with subjecting citizens to immigrants, yes.
Right, illegal immigrants specifically.
No, I think that they should go through legal channels, but I think it should be easy to become a citizen of a country.
What if they didn't, though? What if they didn't?
Well, if it was easy, they likely would not. I mean, I would be okay with deporting them if they're not willing to go through any legal channels at all.
What if because it's easy, we can say no easier?
Well, then it wouldn't be easier.
Right. But so this is what I'm saying. It's kind of like the catch-22. So you improve the system to make it more efficient, right? But if it becomes efficient in the sense of we are more selective and can deny more people.
No, that would actually be less efficient.
Well, no, I mean,
because most of these people aren't committing crimes. In fact, it is true that immigrants in the United States commit crimes at a lower rate than that of the local population.
But now you're getting into the dark figure of crime, and that's just a dishonest stance to take, right?
It's not. I mean, I can provide you statistics. It is true.
But what you're going to do then, First Amender, is then you're going to look at poor communities and their crime rate, and then you're going to look at the black community at their crime rate. And now what you're doing is you're kind of getting into an ethnocentric thing. The reality is that you have undocumented people, dark figures of crime. You don't really know what's happening, and then depending upon sanctuary.
What is dark figures of crime? What do you mean?
A dark figure of crime would be crime that's unaccounted for, or the crime that was unaccounted for before they got caught.
Well, all I have to operate on is going to be what the current statistics are. Certainly it is possible there to be some sort of dark crime, like what you're saying. But basically what you have just created is an unfalsifiable metric. You're saying, well, just because we don't see it in the numbers doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And I find that to be a basic epistemological error there. You're just saying, well, it must exist, even though that we have no instance where it actually does exist. We're just speculating that it does exist. Let me go ahead and I'll provide the what I'm referring to. Just give me one quick second, okay? By the way, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing right now. I'm a really small YouTuber and I'm really just trying to build up. And I really think that I'm going to be making more content and you're going to just see not just debates, but as well as content like this. So stay tuned to find out. Comparing crime rates between undocumented immigrants, legal immigrants, and native-born U.S. citizens in Texas. Despite the centrality to the public political discourse, we lack even basic information on fundamental questions regarding the undocumented immigrants and crime. This stems largely from data constraints. Going beyond the existing research, we utilize data from the Texas Department of Public Safety, which checks the records of immigration status of all arrestees throughout the state. Contrary to the public perception, we observe considerably lower felony arrest rates among undocumented immigrants compared to legal immigrants and native-born U.S. citizens, and find no evidence that undocumented criminality has increased in recent years. Our findings help us understand why the most aggressive immigrant removal programs have not delivered on their crime reduction promises and are unlikely to do so in the future.
So you think because they're committing less crime than the American citizenry, who outnumbers them because there's not as many illegal immigrants as us anyway.
This would be on a per capita basis.
Hold on. So you think that because they commit less crime, that's crime that otherwise wouldn't have been here, to be clear. You think because they commit less crime, that's a pass?
They are arrested less than the local population.
That's not what I asked, though. So you think because they offend less, because otherwise had they not been here, they never would have offended. You think because they offend less, that's the pass?
I mean, let me ask you this. If somebody is, say, like here on a green card status, or if they are a citizen of the United States and they commit a felony, should we deport them?
They committed a felony? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
We should take citizens who have had a felony and we should deport them?
You're saying a green card is a citizenship?
No, I said a citizen.
Oh, no, I didn't say a citizen, no. I thought you said somebody with a green card.
I said a green card or citizenship status.
Yeah, no, not if they have citizenship. Not if they are an American citizen.
Why is it different if they're a citizen as opposed to having a green card?
Because they are entitled to the Constitution and what it provides.
Do you believe that the Constitution ought to be extended to as many people as possible?
No, I don't think Article 9 even suggests that. Article 9 suggests controlled immigration and approved immigration past the year 1808. And when it refers to persons, it refers to like American citizens.
What I ultimately want to see in society is like a better, more productive society where people live higher quality of living standards. And the way that I see that is done is that there has to be more economic players that allow for there to be more economic activity. I don't see that anything inherent that an immigrant is going to be a job taker as much as a job maker, as much as somebody who is a local population. They fulfill particular niches that often the local population does not want to make. And so what it does do is that it spurs on economic growth. And because it spurs on economic growth, what that means is that people live higher quality of living standard. And I think that us taking these immigrants and treating them as if that they are, a criminal to be detested, I think it's not it is actually a destruction on the local population, but also a destruction on basic human rights. And I guess like what you're pushing up against at this point, Midnight, is you're pushing up against like my argument regarding basic human rights and how this results into higher quality of living standard. You are fighting for the antithesis of that, right? And so it's where we come into just a basic disagreement. We just disagree fundamentally on what we want society to look like. You want more of an authoritarian state, and I want a state where people live a higher quality of living standard.
But my reversal to that is if I'm authoritative, you're for a slave caste.
No, I never argued for a slave caste.
You would be, because illegal immigrants are more susceptible to being victims of crime.
Why are they more susceptible to being victims?
Because they're not going to go to the police and report
No. Oh, wait. Why don't they go to the police?
They're more susceptible to being victims of crime.
Why don't they go to the police though?
They are more
No. Why don't they go to the police?
Demonstrably so.
Why don't they go to the police, Midnight?
They're afraid to be deported. So
why are they afraid of being deported?
Because they're illegal. They committed.
Oh, okay. So if I made them legal, then we wouldn't have this problem, would we?
Well, that would be like saying if we made rape
legal,
it's almost like we would have rapists.
It's almost
That's
like
circular logic.
No, but here's the problem, right? You're talking about the difference between a victimless crime and a victim.
Yeah.
crime, right? A crime that has an association with a victim and one that breaks basic fundamental human rights. I don't think a person moving to the United States and going through the legal channels results in a worse quality of living standard. And it doesn't actually cause any victims, right? Because they're just as much job makers as they are job takers. Midnight, are you aware that an immigrant has the ability to make jobs? Are you aware of that?
You are aware that immigrants will work for a lower wage, no health insurance, and work at overtime hours without time and a half pay.
Whoa, based. I agree. We should have unions. We should have unions for every single one of these immigrants, including the workers in the United States. So that way corporations can't take advantage of their workers. Based. Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you.
What I'm saying is you're advocating for that type of society, though.
No, what I'm advocating for is basic worker rights. And if your concern is the fact that they get taken advantage of, I completely agree with you. I don't believe that we should take advantage of these immigrants. We should make them legal and then apply and then get rid of the right to work state. Dude, we just solved the problem, you and me.
Amender, what did Jasmine Crockett say?
Are you against that or are you for that? Are you for like having worker rights for immigrants?
But there's reality.
Hold on, I gave you the solution, right? If that was possible, stop. If that was a solution for you, Midnight, hold on. If the concern is the rights of the immigrant, right, then obviously a solution would be establish worker rights and then make sure that these people are citizens so that way they don't get taken advantage of, since advantage is the concern. Now that I have alleviated that as a potential concern, do you agree with that?
No, that they shouldn't be here.
Why?
Because they didn't cross legally.
Well, I just said, if it was easy for them to cross, if it was easy to become a citizen of the United States, they wouldn't elect to cross over illegally. You should be aware that this is a problem that has been, you need to be able to listen. You need to be able to listen.
Okay, well, but
this doesn't work unless if you're listening.
What did Jasmine Crockett say? What did this government person say?
Jasmine Crockett? Who's Jasmine Crockett?
I believe it's Jasmine Crockett.
Who's Jasmine Crockett?
She's a politician.
Politicians say all sorts of things.
Well, but specifically, it's kind of like the Freudian slip, right? We need these illegal immigrants to pick the cotton. She's right on the money. That's what they want. They want the slave caste to preserve the middle class.
Okay, because the middle class did you hear what I said?
Without them, the middle class won't be middle class.
I can remove that as a problem. The way that you resolve that, stop talking.
You won't make
stop talking. The way that you get that to be resolved is you establish worker rights and you make them citizens. Then they are no longer a slave caste. I agree with you. They are a slave caste. We don't want that. That's why I argue for basic worker rights.
Right. So they cross over illegally.
No. You make it easy for them to cross, so that way they come over legally.
In your worldview, nobody's illegal. In your worldview,
no.
Well, the real worldview right now, we have illegal migrants.
Okay.
So I understand that you fantasize about Star Trek Utopia, Vulcan hands, no money matters, empathy, and all of that.
Imagine if we were sitting here in the 1830s, right? And you're sitting there and I'm saying, hey, we shouldn't have slavery. And then you say, well, we don't live in this magical world where everybody is equal. It says right here that they're not equal. Like, it's a completely silly argument, right? It's obviously a humanitarian disaster. And the solution to resolving it is establishing worker rights and make it easy to become citizens of the United States. But heck, even if you're not interested in them being citizens of the United States, because I don't know, they'll vote Democrat or whatever. Like, at the end of the day, you could just simply say, hey, let's have, let's just have them with green card status. So while they cannot get federal benefits, they still contribute to the economy and they can work and live in the United States. What's wrong with that?
So illegal immigrants have allowed you to come to the conclusion that every job should be unionized and every business should run a certain way.
Yeah.
So
I don't believe businesses should be taking advantage of their workers.
You're not constitutional anyway. That would
No,
not be a
that would be constitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you can't have unions.
Well, but you're forcing them to make a union is another issue.
Yeah, we have all sorts of federal regulations that exist for businesses. Those are not unconstitutional. They are constitutional.
You're telling them how to run.
Yeah, we do that all the time.
Right, and I understand that there's regulation, but when
there's regulations on businesses. Correct.
So you want it to be legislated that unions are mandatory for all jobs.
I think like if you exceed after a certain size of the business that you are required to be a part of a union. Yes.
What if I have 3 illegal immigrants that work on my farm?
Like it's just you and 3 illegal immigrants?
Yeah,
well, under my society, they wouldn't be illegal. They would just be legal. You would not be able to take advantage of their citizenship status.
So I get the Star Trek utopia, but we have
okay, but I'm telling you,
they're illegal right now.
The reason, like you have to understand that crossing the border is an extremely dangerous action. It often takes days for someone to get, it takes days to get across the desert, right? No, what you have is not millions of people crossing the desert. You have millions of people applying for asylum seeking, right? It's a basic fundamental misunderstanding of exactly what is happening. It is a self-created problem that the Republicans have created. Rather than having a valid pathway to citizenship, they closed off the valid pathway to citizenship, which increases illegal immigration. That's what happened. Okay. And if there is a valid pathway to citizenship, then it would no longer be a humanitarian disaster, or really rather Donald Trump's policy is to simply sweep this under the rug and just apply no asylum seeking at all, which then magically disappears all of the asylum seekers because now there's no pathway. Then all of a sudden the humanitarian disaster isn't there.
What if we make a valid system for immigration and an easier way to get citizenship, but less people are approved?
That would be the opposite.
So
that is antithetical.
So you think maximum immigration is the best way?
No.
So do you want it to be controlled or not?
Well, I mean, let's say, for example, if you have like a genuine supply chain issue, I'm perfectly okay with the government stepping in, providing a quota, build up infrastructure like crazy, so that way you can have a big booming economy and just do that. Yeah, that would be easy.
So you think illegals equals big booming economy?
Yeah,
the only way that's equaling big booming economy.
You will find hardly. No, I didn't say cheap labor. I said I've already addressed this. I don't believe in the right to work state, and the only reason why they are cheap labor is because they're an illegal immigrant. That's why they're cheap labor. We can take advantage of the fact that in fact it benefits the United States by maintaining illegality.
It's all about the preservation of the middle and upper class.
Are you listening to anything that I am saying?
I understand the sentiment that you have, and I get it. Like, if you made them legal, then they could be a more functional part of our society, and that's what you believe. What you're not getting is that if you start to make them all legal, you're wiping out the middle class. And then what you're doing...
No, by establishing worker rights and unions, which we can already show empirically that unions result in higher pay and more people in the middle class. It is empirically the case that union states fare better monetarily than non-union states. This would actually increase the middle class, not decrease it.
What would be a union state? A good example of one.
So we have California, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Montana, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. You may notice that the ones that I have told you are some of the ones that have the highest quality of living standard in the world.
Okay.
As opposed to right-to-work states, which do not.
Yeah.
In fact, it is the right-to-work states that require federal funding from these left-leaning states, right? In order to survive. And so I come to the conclusion that based on the metrics, union people make more money than people who are non-union.
They have the ability to negotiate for more money. They don't always make more money.
Well, so just to be clear, right?
They can fight for it. They can use like-minded companies to argue for a raise and take it to arbitration if they need to.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: are you a capitalist? I'm a capitalist.
I don't believe you are.
I am. I'm a capitalist. I believe in the private ownership of the means of production. Now,
but you don't, because you just advocated for
but that wasn't the question, though. I'm asking, are you a capitalist?
Yeah.
Okay. So the difference that I've been able to observe of capitalism versus something like mercantilism is that capitalism requires a mutual trade between person A and person B, and they accept that trade. The private ownership of the means of production, if you will. I think if you divest capitalism from a mutual trade between party A and party B and now operate it under the basis of coercion, I don't call that capitalism anymore. I just call that mercantilism, an older form of capitalism. A good example of this is you're a conquistador and you have a gun, and you go to a random land and you say, give me your gold, and you point your gun at them and then they give you your gold. Yeah, I mean, it's mercantilism. It's not very conducive to a mutual trade. I wouldn't call that capitalism. I would just call that highway robbery. I don't think when it comes to right to work states that it's very different from, say, the conquistador holding a gun at your face, because the reality is that a majority of people can't actually survive without a job, right? I mean, I guess it's possible that you could probably try to run your own business. Most people don't actually have that ability, or it's incredibly risky, and a majority of the businesses go out of business anyway. So a majority of people have to get a job because all of the chips are stacked in the boss's territory. What that ends up with is that there is no negotiation that happens between the worker and the owner. The owner is the one that holds all the chips, and you basically have to say,
It's called at-will employment.
Yes, exactly. And so it's basically, in my mind, it is a form of coercion and a form of mercantilism. Under a union, when you join a union, now the union acts on behalf of the workers, and the business cannot simply just decide to take advantage of their workers, because the union has an equal amount of representation to the owners themselves, allowing there to be a proper negotiation between the worker and the owners. Right. Mind you, this is still, FYI, a workers' ownership of the means of production model. Right. I'm not arguing that we should divest the ownership of the means of production from the ruling class to the working class. I'm simply saying workers should be able to have some representation in their job. And it is empirically shown that union states do better than non-union states.
What about when a union doesn't represent the workers' interests, but when they represent company interests?
That would be terrible. That's terrible.
They get promotions and they get cushy spots. It happens a lot more than what you think.
I mean, I'm sure it happens, in which case I'm perfectly okay with working the laws regarding unions to ensure that doesn't happen. Sure.
What if I had the ability to go to a job, right? Say, I'm burned out on unions. I don't like this shit. It's, more buddy system, good old boy club. I don't like this. I'm going to go to a job where there's no union. But in your model, every job would have to have a union.
Well, then you could work for a smaller company.
Right. So me and 3 illegal immigrants are on a farm.
Well, they wouldn't be illegal because it would be easy to become a citizen of the United States. The only way that they would still maintain illegality status is under one of the few conditions that I would say would revoke legal status. Number one is if you have a communicable disease of a foreign country. Number 2 is if you're on the OFAC list. And then third, if you're on the no-fly list. As well, if you are convicted of any violent offenses of your home country. And what this would require is diplomatic relations between other nations that have crimes databases. So that way TSA can get access, not TSA, Border Patrol could actually have access to the criminal databases, right? So that way anybody coming into the country, anybody who wants to come and work, they can come and work.
So to be clear, I didn't understand where you were at on the spectrum. You're for maximum immigration or you're for controlled immigration?
I think that there's a middle point.
I agree. I think it's controlled. I think controlled immigration is the middle point.
You've been arguing in favor of the Republican policies, which has been to not have any asylee seekers whatsoever, effectively a humanitarian blight and a disaster. Right. We are no longer the good guys in terms of like the world stage. We are actively destroying people's rights and liberties in order to make a buck.
Well, it's not to make a buck.
It is because maintaining illegality status makes the United States money.
What you're saying is this is at our detriment by getting rid of these people. We should be collapsing because these people have been removed.
Well, we kind of are.
What if we're not? What if the housing market benefits from it? What if more legitimate competition for work happens? What if these employers who are taking advantage of this slave caste now have to seek out legal people and pay what they owe, actually? I understand the idea of, hey, if we make them all
everything
legal,
that I have told you, right, is would be resolved. All of the concerns you've had would be resolved by what I have said. I just personally think, like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I feel like that foreigners around you make you uncomfortable. They make you upset that they're getting something and you're losing something.
That was a huge jump.
Yeah. I mean, no, fair enough. It is a jump, but like I've addressed the humanitarian issues that you have listed, but for whatever reason, you don't find it to be convincing.
To be clear.
Right? Even though it satisfies all of the concerns you have on how badly mistreated that they're. And by the way, just so you know, the Trump administration has decided to have internment camps that specifically will keep somebody indefinitely for excess period of weeks to months before they even see a single court filing. And there is no, by the way, timeline or date. They just simply do it. Do you find that to be a problem?
I don't like it, but they don't have constitutional rights.
So because that they are not citizens, it doesn't matter to you.
I think it does matter how they are treated, right? But I think the situation is that if we're going to remove mass amounts of people from our country who crossed illegally or who we've identified as engaging in criminal activity, I don't think there is a good way to do it. Like, there's some things that don't look good.
I just gave you the answer. They show up. No, I didn't say that. This is what I would argue. They show up. Do you have a communicable disease? Did the doctors check you? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Are you on the OFAC list? No. Okay. Are you on the no-fly list? No. Okay. Are you convicted of any felony or of any violent crime in your home country? Let's check the database. No? Here's your green card. Welcome to the country, senor.
So we're going to do that after I caught them in Chicago, Illinois.
What? No, I'm saying if you have... The people are already going through the ports of entry. The people are already going through the ports of entry legally. Right. The problem is that we were unable to handle the asylee process because it had largely been closed down by Republicans. They made the decision. They created the problem. And the solution is to simply make it easier to have green card status.
Real quick, in response to your chat, I suggest that you guys read the preamble to the Constitution. And when it says our United States, think about who "our" is. Think about who that word is and who it was written for. Because if it were all people at that point in time when the Constitution were written, we still had slaves, right? They weren't recognized as citizens. So who was that word "our" for?
So do you think that like black people shouldn't be citizens?
No, I think they should.
Okay, so that whole thing was just nonsense. That was just garbage.
No,
that whole thing.
It recognizes citizenry. It's not recognizing race. You put the race in there. That's what you did. But it recognizes citizenry.
Well, I mean, but it is fair to say who were the slaves? Were they black people?
The slaves were not seen as citizens.
I agree. Were the slaves black people?
Sure.
Okay. So if they were black people, do you think that black people shouldn't be citizens?
No, black people should be citizens.
Okay, so that whole preamble regarding the Constitution is moot.
No, what you just said was they were made citizens.
No, you said that in the preamble of the Constitution, you said in the preamble of the Constitution, you stated in the preamble of the Constitution that it doesn't, it says our people, right?
States.
And so it doesn't, so then because black people we're not citizens, right? It is fair to argue, based on your preamble, considering we do not consider illegal immigrants to be citizens, right? They're not included in the hour. By that very logic, black people should not be citizens.
Well, no, they were amended. They were made citizens.
Okay, so then we amend it to make illegal immigrants or immigrants an easy pathway to citizenship.
Now you're touching what I wanted to touch on. Now we're getting there.
It's the same thing. I haven't changed my argument at all.
But let's take it a step further, because it's not just about legislation. You want this to be a constitutional amendment. You want to take this up to the highest level by doing.
I mean, I don't even think you need to make a constitutional amendment for this. You just simply reform the asylum seeking process. And have it's a lot less paperwork and it's a lot less work to do it. Right? I could have that up in only a few months. And then afterwards, we literally have to make almost no investment. And because it's a lot easier to get a green card going through a legal port of entry, we know every single person that's coming into the United States, and people aren't potentially hurting themselves going through a desert, and they're not potentially being taken advantage of by owners that are looking specifically for illegal immigrants to take advantage of.
Where does the circular logic end? Why not just make fentanyl legal?
What?
Yeah.
We're talking about illegal immigrants, not fentanyl being legal.
We have an epidemic with fentanyl, and we've provided resources. We have treatment programs. We have free Narcan that you can go and get. These people shouldn't be put in jail. They have an addiction. They have a mental illness. Just make it legal.
This is a whataboutism. Can we stick onto the topic?
I'm trying to gauge at what point.
Can we stick on topic? I mean, I'm more than willing to talk to you about the fentanyl crisis.
But it's not.
Well, it is. You said, what about this other thing not related to the original thing? That's a whataboutism. So I want to get back onto the illegal immigration problem. I'm not against having laws or things being illegal. You need to be able to address what I am saying regarding the immigration status. You have not provided a single rebuttal. You have not provided a single. Stop talking.
It's not a
You have not provided a single rebuttal, right?
It's not a whataboutism.
I'm not addressing your whataboutism until you concede this argument.
It's not a whataboutism.
No, we are not moving off topic. You will either concede to the argument and I will entertain your idea regarding fentanyl, or you get back on topic regarding illegal immigration.
It's about crime. It's not a whataboutism. So we agree that fentanyl, is a victimless crime, right? A person has chosen to do it. There's treatment programs for them. They have Narcan they can go and get. Why is this offensive? Why do we think this is offensive?
I need you to either, I'm not going to address the whataboutism. You either have to, stop talking. You either have to concede to the initial argument, and then I can talk to you about the fentanyl crisis and what ought to be done, or B, stay on topic. Your pick.
Well, we are, but
you're not on topic. I'm not against making things illegal. Moving on. Now, going back to the topic regarding immigration, you have not been able to address my rebuttals at all. None of them have been satisfactory in a defeater of any of my arguments. Not a single one.
The only way you win is if you wave a magic wand and everything is legal. But now what I'm getting down to
is that's not what I said. You're strawmanning my point. That's not what I said.
Is why
I'm not in favor of making everything legal. I'm saying, hey, here's some checks and balances that are sensible, and then make it so it's easy to become, oh my God, stop talking. Do you want to have a back and forth?
Yeah, but you keep over talking me, and that's the issue that you have.
I listen to what you have to say, but right midway through me talking, you then start talking. So again, I want you to stay on topic. Are you going to concede the initial discussion regarding illegal immigration and talk about the fentanyl crisis, or do you want to stay on topic? Yes or no? Which one do you want to do?
I'm talking about why we would be offended for something that has the same criteria, but for the one we are not offended. And what is that factor? What would make the fentanyl epidemic more offensive than, say, illegal immigration?
You have not moved on the topic whatsoever. I've asked you multiple times that This is a whataboutism. You're referring to something that is unrelated. And I'm not going to let you just gish gallop from point to point. I'm going to ensure that we stay on topic with things. And so I guess at that point, we'll just have to agree to disagree and we move on. Thank you very much, Midnight.
If we're not here,